Immediately following the murder of Biggie Smalls in Los Angeles in March of 1997, rumors began swirling in LA that the Southside Crips in Compton were responsible, and that it was over a debt owed by Biggie to the Southsiders that had not been paid. And it sounds wild. Did the gang that, in my opinion, undoubtedly killed Tupac also kill his rival just 6 months later? Could the Southside Crips have been responsible for both murders? Well, LAPD detectives working the Biggie case seemed to think it was possible, and they dedicated a lot of their time to pursuing the Southside Crip theory for Biggie's murder, including Russell Poole and the original RHD detectives. And then again, when Detective Greg Kading and his task force took on the case a decade later, they also zeroed in on the Southside Crips' possible involvement in Biggie's murder. And it's actually not a bad case. So, there's absolutely zero doubt in my mind that the Southside Crips were involved in Tupac's murder. The amount of corroborating statements from Southsiders and their associates and other witnesses has created what I think is a mountain of evidence. And the Las Vegas Metro Police Department should have cleared that case years ago. But that's a whole other episode. I should preface this story by stating that I don't believe the Southside Crips were behind Biggie's murder. But this is an interesting look into the street rumors that were spreading around Compton at the time. Rumors that may have gotten Biggie killed. Fast forward 6 months from Tupac's murder in Las Vegas, and the LAPD is working the Biggie murder case in LA. And on March 12th, just 3 days into the Biggie murder investigation, the LAPD's Wilshire Division hears from Compton PD that Biggie is believed to have been in Compton's South Park, which was the Southside Crips Park, with the Southside Crips on the day of the vibe party where Biggie was killed, and that Bloods were hanging around and mad-dogging the Crips. The next day, Wilshire Division receives intel that Southside Compton Crips were responsible for Biggie's murder, and the reason they killed him was because Biggie owed them money for security jobs and had not paid them. A day later, Wilshire Division Detective Kelly Cooper gets a tip that an FBI informant had gone by Keefe's house in Southside's neighborhood in Compton the night before, and that there was a black Chevy Impala parked behind the house. And of course, Biggie's killer used a mid-90s Impala for the drive-by when Biggie was killed. This informant also tells them that Keefe was known to hang with Biggie when he was in town. Later that day, Compton gang detective Tim Brennan clarifies that the home with the Impala isn't Keefe's, it's his girlfriend's house. Wilshire Division meets with Brennan that afternoon, and their chronological entry for the case for that day lists 7 names as additional witnesses or suspects, and nearly all of them are alleged Southside Crip associates. So in just the first week of the Biggie murder investigation, all of these tips are coming in from both Compton PD and the FBI and directly to Wilshire detectives, pointing the finger at Southside. And the Biggie detectives are taking it seriously. On March 17th, Wilshire Division requests a copy of a traffic citation that Keefe D had received previously, and they learned that the vehicle he was driving when he was pulled over was a 1996 Chevy Impala SS. But they also learn that the car isn't registered to Keefe, it's registered to someone named Parker. So detectives request that LAPD's Air Support Division conduct a flyover of Keefe's girlfriend's house in Compton to check on the possibility that there's an Impala parked in the backyard. And on March 20th, LAPD's Air Division verifies that suspect vehicle is at the location, meaning they did the flyover and confirmed there's an Impala parked there behind the house. And in another entry, they claim that the vehicle is, quote, partially covered. About a week later, Wilshire Division gets another tip, this time through the Sheriff's Department, that a Southside Crip informant has confirmed that Keefe owns a black Chevy Impala and that it's parked behind a house in Southside's neighborhood in Compton. And he adds that Keefe normally keeps the car undercover. This informant also mentioned money owed to Southside, and that he isn't sure what the money was owed for, but he thinks it was for security. He adds that Keefe's nephew, Orlando Anderson, who we know as Tupac's alleged killer, was also at the vibe party on the night of Biggie's murder. A few days after this tip comes in, on April 2nd, the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division takes over the Biggie case from Wilshire Division. And the RHD immediately wastes most of the next 2 weeks chasing after bad jailhouse informants like Waymond Anderson. But then, on April 17th, RHD detectives meet with the South Bureau gang detective who had approached the surveillance team from New York outside the Soul Train Awards the night before Biggie's murder, which I covered back in episode 2. That same detective from South Bureau tells them that an informant told him that Biggie was in Compton South Park with the Southside Crips on the day of his murder, and that, quote, Wallace was paying some gang members for security services rendered, and a dispute ensued with one of the gang members and Wallace over $5,000, and Wallace refused to pay. So, is this the same informant who'd made a similar claim to Compton PD a month earlier? I don't know. The story that Biggie visited Compton on his last day alive is shrouded in mystery. But whether it's legitimate or just a rumor that was going around, I think these statements being made to police finally put the Southside Crip theory onto RHD's radar. A month later, on May 12th, RHD detectives meet with a Compton police detective who claims that shortly after Biggie's murder, he received an anonymous call claiming that Biggie was killed by a Southside Crip gang member because he refused to pay $30,000 owed for killing Tupac, and that Biggie was heard saying, "You killed him because of a beef you had with him," and an unknown source replied, "What's the difference? He's dead." But this is the second tip like this that has come in from an anonymous caller, which is not the strongest evidence, because there's no way to verify if an anonymous caller is credible. It could be anybody calling in to say anything. People could be trying to throw off the investigation, they could be just messing around, or they could be taking the rumors about Biggie owing Southside a debt and drawing their own conclusions that the Crips must have killed Biggie over that. The RHD detectives then talk to one of Compton PD's other informants who says that she's known Keefe and his family for years, and that during a conversation with some people that she refused to identify, she learned that Biggie was killed because he refused to pay the balance of a contract. The contract was in the amount of $1 million for the murder of Tupac. So we can see how these street rumors that Biggie was killed over a debt to the Southside Crips were rampant in the weeks following the murder. And they're probably what led to the famous Chuck Phillips article in the LA Times 5 years later that made this same claim, that Biggie had paid the Southside Crips $1 million for Tupac's murder, and that he'd even supplied the murder weapon himself. Now, in my opinion, Biggie had nothing to do with Tupac's murder. But I also believe that it's these same street rumors that got Biggie killed. Unfortunately, it was revenge for something he didn't actually do. On May 21st, 1997, a confidential informant tells RHD detectives that while she has no knowledge of Orlando Anderson killing Biggie, Anderson's girlfriend left home because of the Biggie homicide, so she believes Anderson may be involved in the homicide. Wilshire Detective Cooper, who's still kind of working the case with RHD, gets an anonymous call claiming that Baby Lane, aka Orlando Anderson, killed Biggie. The following day, Russell Poole himself requests another flyover of Keefe's girlfriend's house to confirm if the Impala is still parked in back. And they confirm that a black Chevy Impala SS with chrome rims is still parked in the driveway at the rear of the location with no cover. 6 days later, on May 29th, 1997, a search warrant is served on Keefe's girlfriend's house in Compton, and police take a 1996 Chevy Impala into custody as evidence. the vehicle is towed to the LAPD's print shed for processing, and the Impala is examined by the LAPD for evidence. And these are some of the photos that they took. The following day, Detective Poole tracks down Parker, who the Impala is supposedly registered to. And Parker says he'll meet with detectives at 5 p.m. later that day, but then he doesn't show. On June 3rd, Keefe calls Wilshire Detective Cooper and says he's ready to speak to detectives. But then, just like Parker, Keefe also fails to show up to meet with detectives the following day as planned. 2 days later, Parker is located at his girlfriend's house and he's interviewed by Poole and his partner. He eventually admits that he was at the vibe party on the night of Biggie's murder, along with Orlando Anderson and DeAndre Smith, who coincidentally are the two guys who were allegedly in the back seat of the shooter's car when Tupac was shot in Vegas, and that they arrived together in Smith's Burgundy IROC. And he claims that they left the party before the shooting happened, and that Keefe later paged them and spoke to Orlando telling him that Biggie was dead. And when asked what vehicle Keefe had driven to the vibe party, Parker says he doesn't know. About a week later, an article in the LA Times by Chuck Phillips reveals the news that Keefe's car had been seized by the LAPD and that Edie Fall, who was Keefe's attorney at the time, had told Phillips that Keefe was going to be meeting with the RHD. So this is getting put out to the public now. And finally, on June 20th, 1997, after rescheduling twice, Keefe and his attorney meet with RHD detectives Miller and Poole, which was referenced in my documentary Murder Rap and even recreated in the scripted series Unsolved. In this interview, Keefe confirms that he was at the vibe party on the night of Biggie's murder and that he even approached Biggie's table and spoke with him.
Did you see Biggie there or Puffy there? Do you know who Puffy Combs is?
Yeah, I know who Puffy Combs is.
Did you see them at the party?
Yeah, I seen both of them.
Did you talk to Little C?
Yeah, I talked to
inside?
him.
What did you guys talk about? I mean, you met before, right?
He just said, "How you doing?" Yeah, you know.
This was also confirmed by Biggie's close friend, Lil Cease.
Where did these guys from Compton approach you and ask you for that you wanted to provide security?
Did I want security
Yeah.
at that place?
At the party?
Yeah.
At the museum?
Yeah.
Did he approach Big?
Yeah.
Did you talk to him? About what?
He didn't talk to him, but he came and set us up to Big though.
Oh, yeah?
Because he walked over there with me when he did it.
What was Big's response?
So what's up? Smack hands. So what's up, man?
Keefe also claims that when the shooting happened, he was still in the parking garage.
When you got shot, I was up under the parking garage waiting on the valet man with my car. You know, the whole crowd just started running up under the parking garage. You know, Biggie got shot.
And he says he drove to the party not in the Impala, but in a green Cutlass.
Well, I was in a green Cutlass. Green.
Older?
It was 95 Cutlass.
Keefe tells the detectives that they're barking up the wrong tree. He had nothing to do with Biggie's murder.
The reason why I asked, we're trying to identify everybody who was there so we can interview them, see if we can't find out some more information about this.
Well, you only tell you the truthful opinion.
Okay.
Y'all barking up the wrong tree, and they're wasting a lot of taxpayers' money.
A few days later, after finding nothing of any real evidentiary value in Keefe's Impala, the LAPD releases it. And that's kind of it. Keefe's Impala and interview lead detectives nowhere, and after June of 1997, the only time the Southside Crips come up again in the original investigation is regarding the Tupac case, not Biggie. But it's all kind of suspicious, right? Southside Crips are at the party where Biggie is killed. One of their shot callers is seen talking to the victim before the shooting, and you have the street rumors that Southside was behind the murder. But here's why I don't think the Southside Crips had anything to do with Biggie's murder. The most obvious reason is that Keefe D and pretty much any other Southside Crip would have likely been recognized by Biggie's entourage, since they'd allegedly hung out with Biggie before and had supposedly attended some of his West Coast shows. That's even how Lil Cease identified Keefe from when he visited Biggie's table at the vibe party, because he'd seen Keefe before.
How did you guys look?
Well, I saw one of them on that picture you gave.
Well, let's get that picture back out then.
Right there.
Okay, you saw that guy at number 2 there, huh?
Yep.
So you saw that guy when you was on the Josie
that
tour?
Josie tour.
Same guy?
Same guy. Same dude, right there. Yep. I saw him that night. I know that face. I saw him twice.
It was a BET tour.
BET tour.
Where was it at?
He went to one in San Diego, went to one in Anaheim, Irvine, then in Vegas. Irvine was the summertime.
So in my opinion, Biggie's killer had to be an enforcer from Compton that the New Yorkers wouldn't have recognized. And I think that pretty much rules out the Southside Crips. And Cease was one of only 2 people to see the face of the shooter behind the wheel when the shooting happened. So if it had been one of these Southside Crips, I think he likely would have recognized him. But he didn't. And as for the Impala being tucked away behind a house, there was a perfectly good explanation for this that had nothing to do with murder. The payments were supposedly behind. In fact, detectives learned that GM Financial had the Impala listed as a lost account, meaning they were looking to repossess it. And when the LAPD was done processing the Impala for evidence, they released it to GM Financial. I think it all goes to show that there can be perfectly innocent explanations for people's behavior that have nothing to do with a murder, or whatever case it is you're looking at. And I also think it shows how easy it is to get tunnel vision and chase after the wrong people.